In 1989, Japan's Nikkei reached an all-time high, and the nation was a global powerhouse. 8 of the world's 10 largest companies were Japanese, and its GDP per capita had surpassed America's by 10%. Iconic American landmarks, like the Rockefeller Center, were now under Japanese ownership, symbolizing the country's dominance. Movies like Blade Runner even envisioned a future ruled by Japan, and it felt as though the rising sun would never set. But by 1990, everything came crashing down. The Nikkei lost 38% of its value, erasing $2 trillion in market capitalization. Even today, in 2024, Japan's wages have not recovered to the levels seen during its economic miracle. How did a country with such incredible momentum falter so dramatically? Japan's post-war economic rise is nothing short of extraordinary. After World War II, the nation was in ruins. Its factories were destroyed, much of its labor force was lost, and its economy was in shambles. Fearing that Japan might follow China into communism, the United States implemented aggressive reforms to stabilize the country. These reforms dismantled the zaibatsu, the family-controlled monopolies that dominated Japan, redistributed land to ordinary citizens, and turned the nation into an export powerhouse. This transformation was accelerated by the Korean War, as Japan became a key supplier of goods, and by government-backed low-interest loans that fueled industrial growth. Between 1953 and 1957, exports of Japanese manufactured goods surged by 143%, far outpacing the growth seen in the United States and the United Kingdom during the same period. By the 1970s, Japan's industrial policy had evolved, moving from low-cost goods to high-tech, high-quality manufacturing. Companies like Sony, Toyota, and Panasonic became household names worldwide. The economy boomed, and the country's newfound wealth was reflected in its citizens' lifestyles. Luxury brands like Louis Vuitton and Hermes thrived in Japan, turning Tokyo into a global hub for high-end retail. At the same time, the United States grappled with its own economic challenges, and the dollar appreciated significantly, putting pressure on American manufacturers. To address this, the Plaza Accords of 1985 forced Japan to let the yen appreciate against the dollar, making Japanese goods more expensive abroad. The Plaza Accords marked the beginning of Japan's troubles. The rapid appreciation of the yen weakened Japan's export-driven economy. In response, the government slashed interest rates to an unprecedented 2.5%, sparking a speculative frenzy. Cheap credit fueled a bubble in stocks and real estate, with land values soaring to unsustainable levels. Banks, encouraged by the government, handed out risky loans without proper oversight, creating a fragile financial system. By the late 1980s, the bubble had reached its peak. When the bubble burst in 1990, the impact was catastrophic. The Nikkei lost nearly $1 trillion in value, and real estate prices plummeted by an additional $3 trillion. The government's response was slow and ineffective. Instead of allowing failing banks and companies to collapse, Japan propped them up, creating zombie banks that continued lending to unprofitable businesses. This reluctance to let the market correct itself led to years of stagnation. Public funds were not injected into the banking system until 1999, nearly a decade too late, by which point bad loans had piled up to nearly 10% of GDP. Compounding the problem was Japan's ineffective fiscal policy. The government introduced stimulus packages to jumpstart the economy, but consistently underdelivered. Much of the spending was directed toward rural infrastructure projects with little economic impact, while urban areas, the true engines of growth, received minimal investment. A tax hike in 1997 further eroded consumer confidence, pushing the economy back into recession. By the 2000s, Japan was trapped in a deflationary spiral, with the Bank of Japan's zero-interest rate policy failing to spur growth. Quantitative easing, introduced in 2001, came too late to reverse the damage. Beyond policy failures, Japan's corporate and cultural structures also played a significant role in its stagnation. The so-called Iron Triangle, a cozy alliance between banks, businesses, and regulators, stifled competition and innovation. Failing companies were kept alive with cheap loans, while productive capital was tied up in inefficient enterprises. Even Japan's tech and manufacturing industries, once global leaders, struggled to adapt to a changing world. Corporate culture emphasized long hours and hierarchy over innovation and efficiency, leaving Japanese firms unable to compete with more dynamic rivals abroad. Demographics further compounded Japan's woes. The country's strict immigration policies and aging population have created significant labor shortages. Since 1995, Japan's working-age population has declined by over 10%, and by 2024, more than a quarter of its citizens are over 65. Unlike other nations that address similar demographic challenges, by opening their borders to foreign workers, Japan doubled down on its homogeneity, limiting its economic potential. The story of Japan's economic stagnation is a cautionary tale for other developed nations. Despite its miraculous rise, the country made critical mistakes that turned its economic miracle into decades of stagnation. It relied too heavily on on debt-fueled growth, prioritized speculative investments over innovation, and resisted structural reforms. Even today, Japan struggles with low wages, limited innovation, and a declining population. Japan's experience highlights the dangers of complacency and the importance of adaptability. Debt is not a sustainable growth strategy, and businesses must be allowed to fail to foster innovation and productivity. For Japan, the lessons of its past remain as relevant as ever. If the nation can embrace change, it might yet see the rising sun shine once more. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights into economics and history.